Hello and welcome to our webinar for the Leverhulme Doctoral Scholarship Centre for Watercultures. My name is Professor Bryony McDonough and I'm Director of the Energy and Environment Institute here at the University of Hull and also Director of our Leverhulme Doctoral Scholarship Centre for Watercultures. Great, there I am. So welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're joined by colleagues in the centre and by supervisors advertising projects for this year's September 2024 entry. You can see them on the screen here. They will all wave to you in a cheery fashion. There they are. Thank you very much, folks. So we're here today to talk to you about our interdisciplinary research centre, the Centre for Watercultures. We're going to talk you through today some information about the centre itself. We're going to talk to you about the projects that are on advert for entry for 2024. We're going to tell you a bit about training within the centre and things like placements, seminar series and opportunities within the centre. And then at the end, we're going to have some time for you to ask questions. In order to ask questions, you need to drop that into the questions chat, and then I and colleagues will see those and we'll try and get through as many as possible of those questions at the end of the session. So thank you for joining us. We're really pleased to have you here. And as I say, we're going to talk to you about the centre and its intentions and its organisation. So the Centre for Waterculture works to interrogate cultural responses to and understandings of water in coastal, estuarine and delta regions globally. We're all working together to develop, train and support the next generation of research leaders to work together on a number of themes. So collectively, we and our students are working to better understand watercultures in their diverse temporal and geographical contexts. We're working to find solutions to and engage diverse communities worldwide in the complex challenges of living with water in a changing climate. And perhaps most importantly, we're collectively pioneering what we've called the green-blue humanities and working together to equip a new generation of PhD researchers to take this agenda forwards. Next slide, please. So, the Centre for Watercultures focuses research capacity and innovation on that kind of critical green-blue interface between land and water. So those muddy, murky, difficult spaces between land and sea or estuary and river. It does so in order to address three cross-cutting water challenges. So we work on flood and water-based disasters. We work on water scarcity, including drought and water supply issues. And we work on unsafe water, including concerns about sanitation, disease and pollution. And you'll see those three themes running through the variety of projects that are on offer for entry this year. And we collectively believe that the University of Hull, with this diverse array of researcher expertise, with colleagues working right across all four of our faculties and all of our research institutes, are really uniquely positioned to work with our PhD students in developing the green-blue humanities. But you don't need to take my word for it. If we move on to the next slide, we are going to hear from some of the PhD students and researchers currently working within the centre.
I wanted to be the first doctor in my family.
I wanted to do a PhD to tackle challenges that nobody's tried to tackle before. For me, I really was interested in bridging what happens in research into real life settings. There's so much amazing research out there, but I think if we can apply that into real life, we can really make a change.
I am actually doing a research on gender to water, basically looking at women and water crisis within South Africa.
It is the societal relevance, because when you talk of flooding, you rarely spend a day without hearing a place where it is flooded.
Without a PhD, you reach a ceiling. And so it was very important for me as an academic to actually earn a PhD.
I kind of see it as a massive project.
I want to be a subject expert and contributing to that development of policies and practice.
Really wanted to do a PhD because I loved doing my master's project. So far I'm loving it.
The projects are amazing here. There's a lot of things happening.
I really love Hull as a city. It's got a really nice community.
I came to visit the university and I was really impressed with the campus, the facilities.
We've got industry people that are part of the cohort. I really like the research culture. The offices are quite a lively place.
Working in an interdisciplinary group helps me to get different point of view in my research.
I found a home here. It's important to have a supportive community, so I've got that here.
I find it very inclusive, and you also have a lot of freedom for your ideas.
I would definitely recommend coming to the University of Hull if people are looking to do a PhD.
If you're passionate about something, then you'll find the right people here to teach you.
One of the things that surprised me most possibly was how supportive your supervisors are. So, go for it.
Excellent, thank you. So hopefully that puts it better than we could have put it. It's certainly much better than watching myself on screen, as I've had to do, talking about the scheme for the past 2 or 3 years. So I'm delighted that we have convinced our very brilliant PhD researchers to do a bit of video recording for us. So you can see pictures of us here on the screen now. So this is just briefly to introduce you to the team who are running the Centre for Horticultures. So it's myself, as I say, I'm Bryony McDonough. It's Dr. Stuart Mottram who's joined us here today. You can see him on the screen. He's waving now. He's a reader in English here at the University of Hull. And it's Professor Tom Coulthard, who sends his apologies for tonight. He's not very well, I'm afraid, but he's Professor of Physical Geography here at the University of Hull. And we're a really interdisciplinary team. You'll see that again when our supervisors speak to their own projects shortly. It's a deliberately transdisciplinary bunch of people working across and between different disciplines in order to really solve those societal challenges that we're flagging around water and humanity. As I say, this year we're advertising 7 interdisciplinary projects exploring global water cultures across time and space, and you'll see the diversity of those projects in a second as I hand over to my colleagues. And there's also an open call for applicant-devised research proposals, which I'll also speak to after we've heard from our colleagues. So in the first instance, I'm going to hand over to Pedro, who's going to talk to you about his project within the centre this year. Many thanks.
Many thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from the UK. So I'm a senior lecturer in health and climate change in the Hull York Medical School. And next slide, please, Amy. And the project that we're advertising here is called Dissecting That Climate, Water and Health Nexus for People with Disabilities and Rare Diseases. You are likely to be working with a range of, previous slide, please, Amy. You're likely to be working with a range of private and public sector partners. We have excellent relationships with the East Riding of Yorkshire Council, and you're likely to be collaborating with the Public Health Department there to access, for example, census data for those people with disabilities. And also Dr. Lisa Ackley from Reckitt has agreed to be part of the supervisory team. So that brings, let's say, the public and the private partners to these PhD studentship. And we are here to investigate that, to investigate those relationships between disabilities, disease, water, drought and hygiene, and health. So if you imagine that triangle with water, drought and hygiene, and health in the center for people with disabilities. Using those case studies in Yorkshire in the UK and in Ghana, as you're going to see in a second. Next slide, please, Amy. Thank you. So, as I say, multidisciplinary team, that's me on the left. I do have excellent networks and connections. I say I'm in the medical school, bringing in that health expertise. I'm also the director of an MSc in health and climate change, and I am an established supervisor, having supervised 3 PhD students. I have currently 4, 2 finishing the next few months. Emma is reading an agent in psychology. She has excellent links to Dementia UK and to the WHO, and she's graduated more than 20 PhD students so far. And Simon on your right, he's a political scientist bringing in that humanities expertise from Kwame Nkrumah University in Ghana, and he will be the joint second supervisor. Next slide, please, Amy. And next one, please. Thank you. So in terms of the project itself, health inequality is at the core of our climate change vulnerabilities in orange. So people with dementia, for example, will have reduced adaptive capacity to heat waves and droughts, and perhaps greater exposure, and certainly greater sensitivity. And that can feed back on those social determinants of health. So you will be disentangling all these links between climate, water, and health for people with disabilities and rare diseases. So hopefully you found that inspiring. Come and join the team. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name's Professor Graham Ferrer, and I'm leading this project on investigating how earlier societies perceived and adapted to climate change and the resultant changing water landscapes. Thank you very much, Amy. Now, Humber Estuary provides a perfect study area as it's changed dramatically over the last 2,000 years, with the sea level being as much as 1 metre higher during the Roman and Norman periods than now. Consequently, the landscape was dramatically different, with large parts of the East Riding of Yorkshire and Lincolnshire being submerged, with only small areas, discrete areas being exposed, dry land. So at the moment, we've currently got very limited understanding of the relationships between these human communities and the water landscapes along the banks of the Humber Estuary during these periods, as all the landscape and the physical evidence left behind by these societies is almost entirely hidden. We've also got limited knowledge on the inferred attitude and the observed responses of the local communities to environmental change, how they adapted to them, and the nature of any physical interventions. Therefore, the challenge for us is that in order to reconstruct the physical, social, economic, and cultural geographies, we've got to employ a highly novel transdisciplinary approach using a wide range of techniques, and some of them are on the slide. So we've got to use remote sensing from UAVs, we've got to use geophysics, GIS modeling, but in parallel to that, we've got to use archaeological data sets and also importantly, archival analysis. And together, integrating this, it provides us with a basis of identifying these challenges. Now, this is not just an academic interest, but this project will be of interest to current dwellers along the Humber and also other communities in similar settings across the world, giving insights into how people in life can adapt along an estuary during times of dramatic environmental change. Can you have the next slide, please? So we've got a powerhouse of a supervisory team. So I'm leading it. My expertise is in remote sensing, GIS, and geophysics. My colleague, Dr. Stuart Mottram, who you can see there, has got an expertise in flood risk and literature, English literature, and environmental humanities. And 2 colleagues who are not around this evening is Helen Fennick in history, archaeology, and Jane Bunting in ecology and paleoenvironmental modelling. Now, what we ask for is applicants, we welcome applicants with a wide range of backgrounds from history, English, geography, archaeology, etc. And we've got the ability to adapt this project to the specific interests of candidates. So hopefully we'll hear from you with any specific questions, either during this session or any time after. Okay, on to the next speaker.
Hello, thanks for joining us tonight. So I'm really excited by this proposed project that will be with my colleague Anna Fitzer from the School of English, Department of English in the School of Humanities. I'm a marine environmental biologist. Can we have the next slide, please? So this project is all around a contemporary issue that probably goes back in history, though. So I am a fisheries scientist, a marine biologist and fisheries scientist, and I'm particularly interested in the culture around fishing. I'm incredibly well networked with the fishing industry across the country. And what this project is focusing on is how fishing communities have changed and are being changed by the sort of gentrification of coastal settlements and how that's reflected in literature. We have a view of fishing communities and fishing that's depicted in the picture here by Percy Craft, where you've got a bunch of bearded gentlemen dealing with pilchards in a net, you know, and we have this romantic view of a fisherman as this kind of sou'wester wearing, grizzly bearded guy going out and fighting the elements on his own. And so people like to go to picturesque villages like Staithes on the Yorkshire coast or some of the places up around the Clyde and sort of try to reconnect, I think, with nature and an industry that is based on nature. Unfortunately, that industry that's based on nature is being forced out by the gentrification of these villages, and house prices are going up and people can't afford to live anymore, and that is changing the cultures in these villages. And what we're these not just villages, towns and settlements, but and what we're particularly interested in is how the change in those settlements is reflected in the literature that's coming from the people that live within those settlements. And I think, and so reflecting on something one of our another PhD student that Anna and I share, who was talking about poetry for policy, how arts can have an influence on policy. And I would like to see this project have an influence on policies around planning for villages that are threatened, or the cultures of villages that are threatened by these sort of massive changes that are happening in coastal settlements around the UK. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the two of us. So Anna is a English lecturer with sort of research interests in 18th, 19th century. So I'm a very much dyed-in-the-wool sort of marine biologist with interests in fisheries and marine ecology, and have over the years become more interested in actually cultures of fishing communities and communities at sea. It's where I come from. I'm a son of a fisherman, and I've grown up with fishing kind of in my blood. And now, as an academic, I'm trying to study that really. I sit on the Invisible Dust, which is an art science organisation. I'm very, very excited by this project because I really truly, as Anora was talking about in a previous slide there about interdisciplinarity and how exciting that is, it's a really exciting interdisciplinary project. And Anna and I generally, we work 50-50. You see people talking about first and second supervisors. We definitely co-supervise these. And I've learned a lot from dealing with people in this field. So I hope you'll have a look at this project and consider it. Thank you very much. Next person, please, Amy.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Lisa Jones, and I'm a Reader in Education here at the University of Hull. Next slide, please. The PhD project I'm here to talk about is called Narrative Waves, Unveiling the Power of Class-Based Place Attachment to Water through Creative Intergenerational Storytelling for Climate Action. So as the title hopefully makes clear, the focus of this project is on underserved working class communities at risk of water-related climate challenges. By underserved, we mean communities that have historically been under-resourced and often neglected by policymakers, and as a result, often face a number of significant socioeconomic inequalities. The project itself will focus on place attachment to water, be that the sea, local rivers and/or estuaries, and we'll explore intergenerational understandings of these. By place attachment, we mean the emotional bond and connections that people have between themselves and places. And by intergenerational, we mean involving or affecting more than one generation and often exploring the relationship between these. It's intended to be a transdisciplinary project whereby the different disciplinary approaches and knowledges are integrated in a holistic and harmonious way to construct new knowledge and understandings on this under-researched area. And we welcome applicants from any discipline of any relevance to the focus of the project. The successful project candidate will be expected to utilise participatory approaches and methods. That is where research is conducted with participants and is not research done to or about them. It is also about using creative approaches and methods as well. A key focus of the project then will be on identifying water-inspired, place-based stories of belonging connected to water, so including living by water, working on or with the water, for example, the docks or fishing, and or recreation with the water, so for example, visiting the coast. The aim of doing this project is very much to look at how we can explore such approaches as a way to enhance critical climate literacy and also around mobilising climate action within underserved communities. Next slide, please. Okay. So yeah, the supervisory team then will include myself and will also include Professor Bryony McDonough, who you've heard from this evening, and Dr. Jill Hughes. And together we will very much work as co-supervisors, and we're really excited to be working together on this really important project. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Okay, hello everyone. So I'm Dr. Blake Morton. I'm a lecturer in psychology in the Department of Psychology here at the University of Hull. My specialty is in animal behavior and human psychology. So this particular project that I will be supervising is aiming to really look at the relationship between drawing parallels between human and animal psychology in relation to how they use those abilities to adapt to the climate crisis, and whether or not disseminating that information to the public can impact people in a way to raise awareness about these issues and help them engage a little bit more. So basically, psychologically, long story short, facts don't change people's minds, with a few exceptions, one of which being whether or not those facts align with people's pre-existing values or beliefs. We also know from research that people really value things that are like them, including drawing parallels between humans and animals. It's so powerful that drawing the parallels between human and animal intelligence, for example, can change people in ways related to the climate crisis. So dietary changes or greater concern for biodiversity loss. You can look in your own time this pre-registered manuscript that we've just recently submitted for publication. And we argue that we can actually use this information to harness greater engagement for more distal issues such as the climate crisis, beyond just things like concern about animal welfare or the biodiversity crisis. So the selected candidate would be involved in my research program called the British Carnivore Project. If you'd like to find out more information about that, you can just Google it. We have a website for it. It's a national program with over 400 stakeholders at the moment and growing, filled with scientists, students, members of the public, and pretty much any conservation NGO you can imagine here in the UK. We're involved in some capacity with them. And we travel all up and down the country from London to the top of Scotland, looking or quantifying, as you can see, our study species here on the bottom right, the bottom left slide. We look at quantifying their personalities and intelligence, animal psychology stuff, using puzzle feeders, as you can see in the center of your screen there. And we record it non-invasively through trail cameras. And then we loop that into experiments that we do with humans, where we do little interventions. So we manipulate that information to see whether or not and how we can change people's attitudes. And this paper that we've just pre-registered addresses that. And it's powerful enough that we think that it can actually go beyond traditional means of getting people engaged with the climate crisis, such as talking about animal ecology and how they're being impacted by changing the climate. The animal psychology angle really does seem to engage people far beyond that. Next slide. So Next slide. Oh, yeah, there we go. So this research will be about 50% animal and 50% doing field work with our carnivores, and then 50% looping that back into psychological tests with people. You'll be housed under as me as the primary supervisor here in the psychology department, and supervised as secondary supervisor with Dr. Charlotte Hopkins in marine science. We work together already quite a lot, and her specialty is in marine science, but specifically and very pertinent to this research project, she looks at public attitudes towards wildlife and environmental issues. So that's it for me. You're welcome. Again, there's my website there if you're interested in looking more into the British Carnivore Project, but otherwise, I look forward to hearing from you if you're interested.
Hi there, I'm Joy Porter. I'm one of the original co-investigators on this Leverhulme Doctoral Scholarship Centre. And if we could have the next slide, please. So this is your chance to study the foundational water story, which is the Great Flood story. And what interests us in the Treated Spaces research group, where we work with lots of Indigenous people all over the world, is the quite spooky thing that floods and stories of an enormous flood are one of those world stories, and you come across them in really diverse contexts all across North and South America. So this PhD gives you a chance to write a book that I think really should already be on the shelves, which is about the world story of the Great Flood and how all the different identities across the world have addressed it. Now, it may be that you're less interested in the Indigenous dimension than maybe we are, and you're more interested in South America and its Great Flood stories, or the Near East, or India, its stories, or the Philippines, Great Flood stories, or the big tradition in rabbinic Judaism of great floods being decisive in terms of deep time. So we'd really like you to be researching this foundational story and perhaps thinking about how you can maybe write that first great book on the Great Flood, or maybe use your approach to this foundational narrative to meet your aims for your career going forward. There are opportunities for you to connect with various different other entities while you're studying the Great Flood stories across the world. But really, we're happy for you to make your own pathway and make choices about how you address that. We will, though, give you direction. We might encourage you, for example, to look at the Maya deluge myth or the 4 flood myth traditions of classical China, or certainly the Earth Diver foundational narrative that's across northeastern United States. Can we have the next slide, please? So this is the team. It's myself and a wonderful colleague, Dr. Stephen Forrest, who's a lecturer in flood resilience and sustainable transformations at the Energy and Environment Institute. And he's going to bring a more STEM orientated dimension for you. So really, this PhD is excellent for anyone who has a background either in the sciences or in the arts and humanities, or, for example, is coming at this from a literary point of view, an anthropology point of view, or who's interested in taking a foundational narrative and looking at it in really new and interesting ways. We think this is the kind of story that is very attractive to publishers because there's a clear absence of analysis of great flood narratives across the world in terms of deep time. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Helen Pryor. I'm a senior lecturer in music in the School of Arts, and I'm joined by Blake, who is one of the co-supervisors on the project. So this project is really kind of inspired by the vast number of pieces of music that have been written about water. So you've got everything from Bjork to Sanson with the Carnival of the Animals and that wonderful piece about the aquarium. So popular, classical, there's an enormous repertoire there. And so what the aim of this project is to look at how music focused on water might influence people's environmental beliefs, attitudes and behaviours. So the research we've done already, I wrote an article examining some of the theories involved in environmental psychology and looking at existing research in music psychology to see where those two might fit together. So we have various ideas about possible links between the power of music and the sort of trigger points, if you like, in the theories of environmental psychology and behaviour that's environment related. So we really want to test those using empirical studies of music listeners using existing or original music with a focus on water. So you might be a prospective PhD student who has a background as a music student, as an undergraduate, or you might be somebody who's done a psychology first degree, but has an interest in music. You might be somebody who has skills in musical creation, so composition or music writing in some form. But a really important skill that we need you to have is those empirical skills to be able to design and conduct experiments with people. So what we're interested in is listeners' responses to music, their environmental beliefs, their attitudes, and their pro-environmental and resilience behaviours. And what you will end up doing is transforming our understanding of music's potential to help address climate change. So we know an awful lot about the power of music, but we want to sort of take that one step further and see how it might, or find evidence for ways that it might be able to help us to address climate change, which obviously is a global topic but has very diverse local impacts. And for example, Hull is at risk of flooding as a result of climate change. Can I have the next slide, please? So the supervisory team for this project, I would be the lead supervisor with Blake being a second supervisor. The other two colleagues on the screen are both from music and they both create music. So Mark Slater is a composer, producer and musicologist, and Matt Barnard is a composer. He creates electronic music and he also deals with spatial representation in sound. So kind of more than three-dimensional sound, which is very interesting itself. So Mark Slater and Matt Barnard have been recently involved in a project using sounds that were recorded in the River Hull's tidal barrier. And they've used this to create music and improvise around those sounds in the city centre. So you may have heard of that if you're local in the city. We also have good links with both local and national ensembles. So we have links with Opera North, we have links with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra. So there may be ways of using particular events that are put on by these organisations. And we also have links with the Freedom Festival as well. So there's lots of potential to work with people in the community, but also to conduct empirical studies of this question. So yeah, if you're interested, then please do get in touch with the Watercultures email address. Thank you.
Hi, and it's now back to me. So you've heard about 7 really brilliant projects that you could apply to, but there is yet another opportunity. So within the Centre for Water Cultures, we advertise both set projects. You've just heard 7 of them led by supervisors here at the University of Hull, but we also have an open call for applicant devised projects. So that means that if you have an idea, a brilliant burning idea for what you want to study for a PhD that fits within one of these research areas, but wasn't something that our supervisors named in the foregoing discussion, and then you've also got the opportunity to pitch a project to us, to apply for a project that you have devised yourself. So those projects need to map onto one of the centre's key research strands. So those 3 research strands are living with and without water. They're about imagining water, and they're about building water futures. So the project needs to map to one of those 3 themes, and there is a longer discussion of each of those themes on the Centre for Water Culture's website. And then this year we're asking for projects within 3 broad research areas. So that's about water cultures and environmental history. So particularly interested in receiving proposals that have particular focus on the medieval or early modern period, or on longue durée approaches. So by that I mean historical geographical projects that stretch over a long period of time, and that might be from very early, going right back to prehistory if you have those skills, and it might go up to contemporary historical examples. And that project would need to focus on the UK and Europe, or on a global comparative history of some description. So if you think you have a project that might work within that area, then do please think about working on and devising something within that theme. We're also interested in projects that speak to water cultures, heritage and environment. So that's interpreted very broadly, but we're particularly interested in projects that focus on community archaeology, on heritage and or sustainability, again in either a UK or in a comparative perspective. And finally, we're interested this year in projects that address water cultures from digital humanities perspectives. So you've heard about the project that Graham is pitching already, but there'd also be an opportunity to develop your own project, which looked at mapping, at data visualization, at virtual reality, or a number of other immersive and digital humanities approaches that might help us to explore one of the centre's key strands. Next slide, please. To pitch one of those projects, you can pitch project and identify a supervisor anywhere within the centre, but we particularly are interested in projects that speak to the research expertise of particular members of staff within the group. So that's myself, it's Stuart as co-director, it's Helen Fennick, who, as you've already heard about, works on archaeology, history and geographical information systems, or at least a good part of her research does, and who'd I think be particularly interested in seeing projects that pitch to the 2nd or 3rd theme within the previous slide. And Dr. Charles Pryor, who with Joy, who you've already heard from, is co-lead for the Treated Spaces Research Group, and will be really interested in hearing from colleagues, applicants who have projects around the digital humanities. So if you've got a project that you think speaks to one of those themes, then please do have a think about working it up, doing a little bit of research on it, thinking about where it sits within the existing research literatures, and potentially pitching a project to us. Now I'm going to hand over to Stuart, who's going to tell you a bit more about the postgraduate research community within the centre. Thanks, Stuart.
Thank you, Bryony, and hello everyone. It's great to not quite see you, but for you to be here this evening. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we offer in the way of community and training at the Centre for Water Cultures. As you can see on the slide, that's summarised. I just want to start by saying, as has been said a number of times tonight, that the centre is committed to interdisciplinarity and to cross-disciplinary approaches to water challenges, global water challenges. So that's about connecting up across disciplines and having conversations across subject areas about how best to approach multifaceted and complex problems. So one of the ways in which we feel that we can best support interdisciplinarity and conversations across disciplines is by putting a really strong focus at the centre on researcher community. Now, as a researcher in the centre, you will be enrolled within the subject area and faculty of your principal supervisor, and therefore you'll have the benefits of participating in the research culture of that subject area and that faculty. You'll have access to all the state-of-the-art facilities that each of our 4 faculties at the university provide. And you'll also, of course, have access to the research cultures and facilities of your co-supervisors. But in addition to that, you'll also have a home at the wonderful Energy and Environment Institute on campus, where all our researchers are co-located. They have access to desk space and a really community feel at the Energy and Environment Institute. Alongside that, we as a centre provide a whole range of support in terms of enabling those cross-disciplinary conversations that I've been speaking about. So, for example, we provide a series of research talks which we invite speakers from around the world to address us, and usually in about 2 every month or so. And those have been really popular, and we've been running those for a number of years now. We also support or facilitate one-off masterclasses on a range of topics relating to water. And we also, alongside that, run a book group where we read climate fiction relating to water, a range of on the centre's key challenges of flood and drought, unsafe water on a regular basis during term. So that's by way of creating a strong community. And I also want to finish by mentioning some of the training that we provide. Every PhD candidate at the University of Hull participates in a postgraduate training scheme, and at the Centre for Water Cultures that's no different. But alongside what the university also already offers, we also have some modules that are particularly tailored to our own researcher community. Foremost among that is our placement scheme, which we ask all researchers to undertake of between, as you can see, 1 to 3 months. We work with a range of industries, cultural organisations, governments, local governments, NGOs, who are working similarly to us on resolving water challenges. Placements can be both within the UK or overseas, and the rationale for these placements is that they give you the opportunity to apply your research findings and your research approach to non-academic situations. And finally, from me, we also provide a mentoring scheme within the centre, and again, this has a strong focus, like the placement scheme, on career development. Okay, that's it from me, and we are now at the point of the webinar where we are able to answer questions that you have being asked. So if you have a question for us relating to topics that we have either talked about tonight or haven't perhaps talked about, that you'd like more information on, then please do, as Bryony mentioned at the start of the webinar, ask a type of question into the questions box and we will endeavour to answer it. I have been answering a couple of questions as the as the webinar has been progressing. And so as we await other questions, we've had questions so far on whether or not, as an international student, you're eligible to apply to the centre. And the answer is yes, you are. We very much welcome international applications. At the centre, we are able to offer a limited number of international fee waivers, and we are more than happy to give more information on our current fees as well.
Yeah, so just to add to that, at present we've got a really nice mix of international and home PGR status students within the centre, and I think that's really important in bringing a diversity of experiences. So ultimately, the Centre for Water Cultures and the university's PGR community as a whole are tackling global issues, and we can't do that purely from a UK focus alone. We think it's really important to bring that global comparative perspective, and you saw that running through a number of the projects we advertised, as well as through the open call. And in order to support that, we do believe really strongly that we should be offering the opportunity, quality of opportunity for people to be involved from across the globe, and that means that we are able to prioritise some applicants with international fee waivers. We can't, and we'll be very clear with you, we can't offer international fee waivers for all of our projects. That's not possible, but they are there for some applicants. So, and that means that what we will do is we will look at all applications across the board, and where the very best applicant for a project is of international standing, we will look to support that as strongly as we can with an international fee waiver. So we would encourage you to apply. Please do think about that. And yes, that absolutely is available, and it's been really crucial actually in ensuring the very best research is done within the centre. I can see other questions now ticking along very quickly, faster than I can read. So one question is it necessary to have already published a lot in academic journals before applying? So for absolute clarity, no, it isn't. For some applicants, that will have been their journey through a master's or other training programme, but we recognise that that's not the norm across the board. So we would always encourage you to apply. And whilst it is an expectation that during a PhD you would work on research publications, we're not expecting you to come with a huge publication background behind you. It is more the norm in some of our disciplines than the other, but it absolutely isn't an expectation across the board. Stuart, can you find me some questions to answer?
Yes, I'm looking at, and indeed they are coming fast, thick and fast, which is absolutely great. A question on something I've just been discussing, but I'm happy to develop this a little further. Would you be willing to speak to the opportunities afforded the collective PhD cohort to share, engage in, and participate in one another's research projects? So one thing I didn't mention as I was talking was the fact that we hold an annual Centre for Water Cultures Postgraduate Researcher Conference, which we've literally just had this year's last week. And that is a really good opportunity for everyone, both researchers and their supervisors, to find out a bit more about each other's projects. So that's one of the opportunities for researchers to share in a kind of semi-formal way their research findings. Informally, of course, the fact that we have a location and a base for our researchers enables them to obviously to share their ideas, their findings, their enthusiasm amongst each other on a daily basis. So we have some formal and semi-formal and informal ways in which people can share their research projects. Hopefully that's answered that question. Okay, I'm just going to go down to the
I'll pick up one while you read the next one, Stuart. So I can see one about teaching opportunities. And asking whether there are teaching opportunities here at the University of Hull for PhD students. So the answer is yes. All of our PhD students at the University of Hull have the opportunity to pursue interests in teaching. That means that you could choose to do some teaching modules, so some training in teaching through our postgraduate training scheme, which has specific both one-day courses and an ongoing module on teaching within a university setting. And we also do our very best to support all of our PhD researchers who want it with some kind of teaching experience within the university. Now, in an interdisciplinary centre like this, that might be in your own existing subject area. It might be looking at how you can teach social science methods within a completely different discipline. It's all part of that kind of transdisciplinary conversation, and our existing PhD researchers are variously doing teaching. Some are doing a fair amount of teaching, some are doing a small amount, some have chosen to focus on other things than teaching during their PhD, but that is available to them. There's a question asking if you need to relocate to Hull if you're successful, or whether you can work to a hybrid model. So for complete clarity, we are an in-person programme. So that means that teaching on the modules, it means that contributions to the Centre for Water Cultures, the seminar series, the masterclasses and the research conference all do take place in person, except where people are beaming in from their placements or their field work, which might be elsewhere in the UK or overseas. We don't require you to live in Hull per se within the geographical boundary, but we do ask that you are an in-person contributor to the centre. So that means that there is desk space within the centre. It means that we are meeting regularly. Stuart and I and Tom meet the PhD community every 2 to 4 weeks, if not more frequently. And it also means that you'll be part of the centre, and that means lots of informal contact. We're very lucky to have a very nice kitchen within our building, which means that there's lots of hanging out, lots of asking questions, lots of, oh, I'm really struggling with this, how can I approach that? And I think that really benefits our PhD researchers. So yes, we would encourage you to be part of that in person, but that doesn't mean that should you need to work from home to wait in for a parcel, or because the dog is a puppy and needs training or whatever it is, or have childcare, that we can't work around that. But it is an expectation that you are here in person to be part of the centre. Stuart, do you want to tackle another question that you've read while I was talking?
Yes, there's a specific question about the application process, and I think this is an opportunity to speak to our EDI practices. The website says to not fill out the personal statement part of the application, but under the experience part it asks for a CV. Should we upload a CV with personal information removed, or only provide the provide the supplementary application form? So I think if that's not clear, we could provide a fuller answer by email to that, but essentially yes. Yeah, I don't know if you want to speak to that, Bryony, but we asked for a CV, but with personal details removed.
Yeah, so as part of our commitment to equality, diversity and inclusion and competency-based interviewing, which speaks again to what I said right at the beginning about not expecting you to come with a huge publication record. This is about you demonstrating your onwards trajectory from here, that you have the skill set and interest and enthusiasm and experience to be able to deliver a really cracking PhD project collaboratively with our wonderful supervisors. It's not about you coming and saying you've already done everything you could possibly do within this area. This is about you learning, adding value, learning to be a PhD student. And so that does mean that because of that commitment to equality, diversity and inclusion, we do blind sift all applications. So our applicants are required to remove identifying information, and there's quite clear guidance on the website as to how to do that. If you are in any way unsure, then please do reach out to watercultures@hull.ac.uk, and our very brilliant admin team will provide some support. And if it's something that you have asked a particular question about in the question section, the question that Stuart read out, then our team will be in touch with you separately with a specific answer to that query. I can see somebody's asked, so there's a question about contacting individual supervisors. So as per what I've said previously about blinding applications, we ask you to send all questions about the project to watercultures.ac, watercultures@hull.ac.uk, and our team will forward on specific queries to the supervisors there. So that will be the best route of answering those questions. I can see there are questions about, please can you provide clarification on the September 2024 intake? So yes, the projects we're advertising now will by and large start in September 2024. So that's a year, well, 10 months or so time. If there are good reasons for projects to need to start slightly later in the academic year, there's a possibility of projects starting in January 2025. But as far as possible, we would encourage people to aim for a September 24 entry, because it's really nice when you all start at the same time. You have that cohort of students progressing through on the same timeline as you. It means that you've got somebody to link in with, to join up with, to kind of share the experiences of doing a PhD. PhDs are wonderful. They're also really hard work. The good news is we've all done them, and we remember the feeling of doing that. My colleagues are smiling, thinking about their own experiences of PhDs, either very recently or some years ago. But yeah, September 24, if possible, but we have on a number of occasions had really brilliant applicants who, for whatever reason, needed to join slightly later in the year, and we've then done a January 2025, well, January of that year intake, so that is possible.
Question related to that, Bryony, on can students who are currently on a master's to be completed in the next 5 months apply? Yes, you can, absolutely. As Bryony's just mentioned, we would like you to start in late September 2024. That allows for most people who are on a 12-month master's to complete their projects or dissertations prior to enrolling at the Centre for Horticulture. So absolutely, you're very welcome to apply if you're currently undertaking a master's.
Great.
Right, we've got another question.
Yes, there's a question here. A question that makes me laugh. To whom do we address applicant process questions as we fumble over digital hurdles? Well, that's such a nicely framed question that I think that speaks to being able to write a PhD already. But the answer is watercultures@hull.ac.uk, who will triage from there if there's a question that either our PG, our admissions team need to deal with, or if we can help you with. So do address comments there. There's also a question about do you have any advice about writing a research proposal for the open call? So yes, there is some guidance on our website. More generally, I would say I would recommend people to do a little bit of reading around the thing they want to do. So you can use things like Google Scholar very quickly and easily to look at what else has been published in a particular area. To ideally, if you can, look at some of that writing. Hopefully, either if you are already registered on an undergraduate or a master's degree, you should have access to your own home institution, or there is quite a lot of material available open access. Google will tell you the abstract, even if you can't access the article. So please try and read around, find out what you can about what's been published. We want you to set your research idea within its wider research context. And then we want you to have a think about how you would go about developing that project. So what the methods are that are relevant to that, what the relevant approach might be, and to try and write a relatively short, there is guidance, I can't remember the exact page limit, on the project, and to pitch that to us through the applicant process. But as I say, there is some detailed guidance on what a research proposal should look like that's available through the website.
There's a couple of questions. There are questions about specific projects, which I think at this point where we're nearing 7 o'clock may be best answered in an email. There is one question about, are all these projects offered full-time only? Yes, they are.
Yes, so I'm afraid restrictions within the funder mean that the projects are all offered full time. That is, I'm sorry to say, beyond our control, but they are in the first instance all offered full time. Yes. There's also a question about how does the university support applicants with disabilities? So just to very briefly speak to that, yes, we would encourage applicants with disabilities. We, of course, as an institution, are able to make reasonable adjustments within any of the projects. And I think if you've got specific queries about whether your particular circumstance would, what that would mean for the project, I'd encourage you to pick up with the Watercultures team, who will then triage onwards with the appropriate kind of blinding in place if that's necessary, or seek really expert advice from our disability advisory service, who are really brilliant, have been involved in lots of work with the university to support students in these circumstances. So please don't let's see that as a barrier to application. Please do reach out to us and we will do our utmost best to support where we can, 100%. So as Stuart says, I think we have reached broadly managed to answer most of the questions. We will pick up any outstanding ones or anyone that needs further clarification through the question tab. And we will make this video available on our YouTube channel, and also I believe we will send it out to anybody that was here tonight. Let's hope nobody sends it to me and I don't have to watch myself talking again, because it is my least favourite thing to do in the academic year. But thank you to all of our panellists, our supervisors who joined us here tonight. Thank you to Stuart for joining me as Deputy Director of the Centre, and thank you to the very many people who I can see logged in online, and those of you who sent all the questions in and engaged with the Centre. It's really brilliant to have had you here, and we will be in touch to answer further questions or reach out to us if needed. So thank you very much, folks. We look forward to welcoming some of you into the Centre for Watercultures in September. So thank you very much and good night. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.